It was Donald Trump who sent his already compromised followers into the J6 trap at the Capitol. It was clear to everybody beforehand that violence was very likely to occur and that radical activist circles were already infiltrated by government agencies. Trump had used Christopher C. Miller to keep the DC National Guard on the shortest leash and, quote, protect the demonstrators. So whining about an FBI orchestration after the fact is just shifting the blame. FBI Director Wray and Mike Pence shoot down the idea that the Bureau had orchestrated the January 6 events. Now, the initial reaction of the MAGA conspiracy crowd is to call anything they don't like fake or staged. The FBI, on the other hand, has a history of bending and even breaking the law when it comes to infiltrating groups. Now, the initial mind-bending reaction of the MAGAs was to describe the hardcore of the rioters, especially inside the Capitol, as Antifa activists dressed as Trump supporters. So everything was supposedly completely fake, right? Over the following days and weeks, virtually all of the rioters were properly identified. Now, MAGAs still cling to the fantasy of Trump having won in 2020 decisively, and they paint the riots either as insignificant or as FBI entrapment. Now, the Democrats rather try to legalize illegal migrants and get them as voters. They don't take a silly risk of fabricating millions of votes. So you always have to imagine a hypothetical planning meeting, of, let's say, the Democrats in this case. What can we do to gain more votes? And, somebody might have one idea or the other. And, just imagine somebody suggesting stealing or fabricating millions of votes. That idea would be laughed out of the room. Now, right-wing activists didn't properly check information and sources leading up to the Capitol riots. Sometimes they even believed nonsensical Q postings on the web about a major upcoming operation called The Storm to arrest Democrats. Pure fantasy. Influencers like Steve Pacinic preached a very similar storyline on shows such as Alex Jones's. Fox News broadcast claims the staff didn't really believe in and which caused massive financial damage due to lawsuits from voting machines manufacturers. Trump's inner circle operated in the shadows, and the many activists had little idea about what Trump was really going to do. Fantasies circulated about calling up Marines and other forces to save America, and other things. In fact, the most loyal Trump followers had the most unrealistic ideas about Trump himself. So from an intelligence standpoint, it was a total failure by the activists. I mean, we also can talk about the FBI and we can talk about that, but what about the activists themselves? They didn't properly understand Trump at all. They didn't understand what the options were, what the situation was, what everybody else was really planning, how this is all going to play out, and what the possible traps might be. Everybody knew violence was coming, and everybody should have guessed that government agencies such as the FBI always try to infiltrate radical circles. So nothing should have come as a surprise. So what was the counterintelligence work done by these activists? So that was a complete failure. And people better learn from those mistakes in order to not repeat them. It's always easy to just talk and double down and just blame everybody else, but this is the method of losers. This is how the losers roll. This is not how successful organizations work. Of the 2,000 or so rioters entering the building, a fraction belonged to groups like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. Not only were most rioters unaware of the militia's plans, most of the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys in general were not in the loop about their leadership's plans for that day. Again, information fiasco. Quite, so many protesters outside, they didn't really know what some other protesters were going to do. They didn't know about the plans of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, and just this complete information fiasco. On December 20th, the Proud Boys leadership handpicked existing members to form a new chapter called the Ministry of Self-Defense in charge of national rally planning. Now, how many other members knew about this new organization? So you don't even know what your own group is or what it may be hiding. So that's, of course, a very, very bad idea. Many activists had little sense of security beforehand. On January 1st, the operator of an obscure website about tunnels under the Capitol noticed a huge spike in traffic to the site, prompting him to notify the FBI of a likely upcoming attack on the building. From December 29 to January 5th, the FBI and its field officers warned of armed protests at every state capital and reported plans by Trump supporters that included violence. So everybody knew. 3 days before the Capitol attack, the Capitol Police Intelligence Unit circulated a 12-page internal memo warning that Trump supporters see the day of the Electoral College vote count as the last opportunity to overturn the results of the presidential elections and could use violence against Congress itself on that date. Everybody knew. It was the responsibility of activists to understand beforehand that violence was coming and this could turn into a PR nightmare for the MAGA movement. It's not enough to whine about entrapment and FBI orchestration after the fact. What did activists do to reduce the threat of a fiasco? Senator Mitt Romney contacted Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and said, "I hope that sufficient security plans are in place, but I'm concerned that the instigator, the president, is the one who commands the reinforcements the DC and Capitol Police might require." On January 3rd, all 10 living former defense secretaries released an open letter in which they expressed concerns about a potential military coup to overturn the election results, mentioning the recently appointed acting Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, by name. That day, Trump ordered Miller to do what was necessary to protect the demonstrators on January 6th. The next day, Miller signed a memo severely limiting the ability of the DC National Guard to deploy without his personal permission. Since his appointment in March 2018, DC National Guard Commanding Major General William Walker had standing orders to respond to civil disturbances in the district. But on January 5th, Walker received new orders from Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, forbidding him to respond to a civil disturbance without explicit prior approval from McCarthy and Miller. Previously, he had authority to respond without first seeking permission. So this is just sort of the whole setup. Now, it seems that Trump was simply experimenting. You know, he thought maybe this could work in his favor, and he tried to protect himself to a certain degree, but he let others take the risk. Even though he must have known violence was coming, he must have known that activist circles are infiltrated by the FBI and Homeland Security and the BATFE. So provocateurs may be an issue. But he appears to have led people into this thing, just egging them on and see how it plays out. And when it didn't play out as intended, Trump just withdrew himself and told people to go home. And of course, quite a few people, they were arrested later and got some pretty serious jail sentences for that. And President Trump gave a speech declaring that he would never concede the election, criticized the media, called for Pence to overturn the election results, which was outside Pence's constitutional power. He told the crowd that he would be with them, but he ultimately did not go to the Capitol. So some of the protesters began invading the Capitol, apparently under the illusion they were part of historical events. Trump would back them, the Democrats would back down, and it would be a happy ending with Proud Boys and Oath Keepers receiving medals and being famous forever. So this would shoot them into superstardom, something. However, the riot lost its steam, and more police arrived. At 4:22 p.m., Trump issued a video message to supporters on social media, finally telling them to go home. Capitol Police leadership had not planned for a riot or attack. On January 6th, under orders from leadership, the force deployed without riot gear, shields, batons, or less lethal arms, such as sting grenades. Department riot shields had been improperly stored. Hundreds more Capitol Police could have been used, but they were not. it was apparently Trump who lured his followers into a trap, not the Democrats or globalists or the FBI or whatever. And so you have to ask yourself what the expectation was of Donald Trump. Did he think this through? Did he have a realistic idea of what might happen? That these people would behave when they storm the Capitol or when they mob politicians. Did he expect Democrats to back down and postpone the certification, the handover of power, and this would all go down very well for Trump? I mean, this is this unrealistic nature of his thinking. Now, people have commented on these narcissistic markers that he constantly exhibits and has been exhibiting for many, many decades. And one of the key aspects of a narcissistic personality is detachment from reality. They live pretty much in the moment. So they don't have a realistic assessment of the future. They don't have a realistic assessment of consequences. And they also can blank out the past, and just reshape their own perception the way they need it to be at this point to feel dominant. So this is the guy that people have chosen as the leader. Okay, so yeah, he's known for his funny one-liners, and he's good in front of a camera, but this is pretty much it. Once the cameras are off and he actually has to get work done, he's not known as a worker. He spends a lot of time watching television and just yelling at people, but he doesn't really get many things done. And he's super complicated to work with. And he's not experienced in all of these topics. He's not an expert on anything besides maybe running casinos and staging beauty pageants. Okay, so it's just and this sort of detachment from reality then became a mass phenomenon. People call this group narcissism. This has actually been studied by experts. So more and more people do not have a clear concept anymore of what's going on, what the information is. And this is the opposite of what successful people do, the opposite of what professionals do, because professionals, they want to know the reality. And no matter what it's like, it's just reality is rarely the way you want it to be. And so activists, they always choose to believe what suits them, even though things are rarely the way they suit you. So about the infiltration game by the FBI and other agencies. For example, Timothy McVey was a typical truther of his day and age, filled with rage and anxiety over America being ruled by the United Nations and patriots ending up in concentration camps. The novel Turner Diaries inspired him to commit terrorism, and there are some interesting discrepancies in the story, but no series of smoking guns as claimed by conspiracy activists. Every single time they will call an event they don't like fake or staged. This is just an automatic response. They viewed the pandemic as fake and staged, as well as the core reasons to defend Ukraine against the Russian war of aggression. Anything they don't like is fake to them or staged. So it may be down to the FBI, Homeland Security, and the BATFE that we haven't seen 50 new McVeys and OKC-style bombings, but there's always the danger of someone in government subtly sabotaging an investigation to let someone's attack plan progress further than it needs to. Activists on the conservative spectrum need their own counterintelligence. They cannot simply rely on activism to whine about the government agencies. They cannot wait for the government agencies to act properly. Especially whining after the fact is pretty stupid, like with January 6th. Activists do not even remotely show a meticulous process when it comes to vetting other activists or vetting information, protecting their information, or planning operations. Anybody who wants to work in intelligence has to undergo a vetting process that extends to this person's personality, private life, and relatives. But activists simply look for ideological agreement and emotions and excitement. Every rookie intelligence asset in training has to constantly recheck information, the sources, possible biases, signs of deception, A CIA foreign asset is expected to walk away from an operation if it feels off and the risk factors are too high. But activists have no such sense of discernment. FBI work can be slow and painstaking. One threshold after the other has to be met in order to progress to the next stage of investigation and maintain within the boundaries of the law. Activists, on the other hand, will happily join crazy adventures. So, decades ago, it was already leaked that surveillance could take place without a court order and against people who have not been charged with a crime. The FBI calls such investigations assessments. So, the words CIA and NSA are no longer redacted in Section 20.2 of the 2021 rulebook, while the full details of the section remains hidden from the public. A leaked copy of the 2011 FBI rulebook obtained by The Intercept shows that Section 20.2 covers assessments in which the FBI uses other agencies like the NSA. Information obtained through CIA and NSA searches can be used in assessments and predictive investigations, according to the leaked 2011 rulebook. The so-called FBI assessments require only an authorized purpose and a clear objective, no search warrant. So, activists may indulge in illegal drugs, dodge taxes, defy weapons laws, and commit other crimes habitually. The FBI can recruit such people aggressively and even decide to trap more folks in a short amount of time. With drug investigations, it was not uncommon to demand a suspect call up 2 friends and set up drug deals. Many right-wing activists hate the government so much they break laws on a regular basis, yet hardly anyone is willing to serve 10 years or more in prison when offered a way out. And so activists often don't even know their comrades too well, and neither do they know all the relevant laws. So involved in all this capital craziness, we had, for example, Joe Biggs, United States Army combat veteran, suffered a traumatic brain injury during a deployment to Iraq. He received a Purple Heart, that's a very high recommendation, very high-ranking medal. There was a gruesome suicide bombing incident. So looks like a group of soldiers was blown up, and Biggs rescued the other soldiers, despite his own injury. In 2007, he was stationed in Fort Bragg when arrested for domestic violence. And Biggs claimed the separation from the Army was a medical retirement after 8 years enlisted. So, there's a lot of bitterness after military service sometimes. Because serving in Afghanistan and then watching Afghanistan getting taken over by the Taliban, that's not pretty. And all the stuff you see on a daily basis and how little these soldiers are paid, how they're treated when they're injured, that creates a lot of bitterness. And also people have been discovering more and more the long-term effects of brain injuries, and especially all these smaller brain injuries. So, for example, soldiers blow open a door or a gate. That little shockwave just harms your brain a little bit. And then just other incidents, where you just take a bump to the head, even if you wear a helmet. These things add up. And when you get hit with an IED, for example, that leaves traumatic brain injuries and has consequences. So quite a few veterans are depressed. They suffer from PTSD. And so then when they self-medicate, for example, with alcohol and other things, this could lead to domestic violence. And at some point, they just can't do this military job anymore. But what do you do after military service in the civilian world? What do you do? What kind of job are you going to do? Who wants to hire you when you have brain damage and you only know how to conduct military operations? So a lot of bitterness, and people just slide into activism, into radical activism. The Proud Boys organization was launched in 2016 on the website of Taki's magazine, a far-right publication for which the white nationalist Richard Spencer had once served as executive editor. Now, Spencer is sort of a Nazi clown. He wants to ethnically cleanse, the United States, has quite a few sympathies for the historical Nazis and American neo-Nazis, but he's a very shady character, even in his private life. As well, his former partner, Nina Kuprianova, under her pen name, referred to herself as a Kremlin troll leader. She published Kremlin talking points. She had ties to Alexander Dugin, the Russian Eurasianist, influencer. The website founded by Spencer, called Alternative Right, accepted direct contributor pieces from Dugin, and Kuprianova has translated several books written by Dugin. However, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Spencer reversed his pro-Russian views, denouncing Putin and supporting NATO and Ukraine. In October 2018, Kuprianova accused him in divorce documents of multiple forms of abuse. So it was a lot of material posted or stuff that came to light, lots of allegations. Claims of emotional abuse, financial abuse, violent physical abuse. And so Spencer denied all allegations made against him, was not charged with a crime, but it doesn't leave a good impression at all. So in 2018, the new leader of the Proud Boys became Enrique Kario, who doesn't look like white power at all. Weirdly enough. But he had a criminal history, and when he was caught in 2012, or he was indicted in 2012, he was charged and he cooperated with investigators, helping them prosecute more than a dozen other people. In 2013, Kario was sentenced to 30 months, of which he served 16 in federal prison, so he got off easy because of his cooperation. Between 2012 and 2014, Kario was an informant to both federal and local law enforcement. His lawyer said that Kario had been a prolific cooperator who had assisted the government in many investigations. So, in as early as June 2021, Kario said that the Proud Boys had been hemorrhaging money since January 2021 because of all the Capitol fallout. So, Proud Boys were cut off from financial systems and streaming platforms. And of course, when he was exposed as a previous collaborator with the government, the Proud Boys as an organization pretty much fell apart. So they had, they've pretty much found out that they had no idea about their own organization. Who were the leaders really? What were really the plans? Who was doing what? It was just a mess, complete mess. Kario was sentenced to 22 years in prison. He received a terrorism enhancement indicating Kario's actions influenced the conduct of government by intimidation and coercion. Kario was begging the judge, please show me mercy. I ask you that you not take my 40s from me. He's scheduled to be released on December 5th of the year 2040. Okay. So you get these different characters, and this is sort of what these activists have to work with. You don't really know their past, you don't really know their mental state, and you don't really know all the crooked stuff they may be involved in. And you don't know how they will react when they get confronted by the FBI. Will they let themselves get recruited? And so, this is a huge problem with, these sometimes these FBI methods. Now, of course, we get all these old scandals. The COINTELPRO program of the FBI and the subsection, the COINTELPRO White Hate program. So in order to destroy the Black Panthers, and the various leftist or standard leftist groups, the FBI used all kinds of shady operations. And this is something that, may happen again in our current era. But the FBI will have known or will have progressed in their methods, so they can protect themselves better than they could in the past. They can just make everybody else take the risk. And so these terrorist investigations since 9/11 showed a clear clear trend of almost entrapment. So, of course, it's legitimate to a certain degree to find people and get them on board with something and see how they would react. But sometimes the FBI would target people who were not even Islamists, people who were just broke, mentally unstable, and not very bright. So they needed money, and somebody just happened to pop up who was an FBI asset and offered them tens of thousands of dollars if they would partake in something. This led to all kinds of convictions, and the same methods may apply to these right-wingers. And of course, you have to have law enforcement, but you also have to take into account that sometimes these people they have suffered traumatic brain injuries, they have suffered PTSD, and they got into this radicalization game. And so they are an easy target, especially if somebody like Trump eggs them on, or Fox News eggs them on, and they believe these unrealistic fantasies may actually be real. Something that also became a problem over and over again in terrorist investigations was the following. So imagine some guy gets indicted, and he tells his lawyer, well, the government has these transcripts of taped conversations with secret microphones, and in these conversations, these transcripts, they make me look bad. But there were also meetings where I said things that make me look a lot better. Why aren't those conversations in the transcripts? This is what they ask their lawyers. And when the lawyers try to figure that out, the government tends to say, well, on that particular day, our asset chose to not make a recording because it was deemed too dangerous, or some recordings were unusable or got damaged or got lost. And so how can you possibly prove that the FBI would make stuff disappear on purpose? So they can cherry pick, with the transcripts and just nail someone while just omitting the stuff that would help the person that's being charged. Okay, what activists, what people really need is a professional mindset, a professional intelligence mindset, figuring out reality and just taking things one step at a time. But what we see now is quite a few people involved in the Capitol craziness or close to it, and these people, these influencers, they're doubling down. They're blaming everybody else. And they just pretend to be heroes. They pretend to be great leaders, and they want to have another Trump admin. They want to have they accuse everybody of being a traitor who is not on board of the Trump train. And they might just repeat this nonsense again if an election doesn't go as intended, and they can just repeat everything. Step by step. And you would get the same problems. You would get the same analysis from us. Oh, look, these activists had no idea about anything, walked into a trap that everybody could see coming, and then they would whine again of being the victims of it all. All right, so please like this video, comment, share, subscribe to this channel, and check out my ebook on ancient intelligence networks in Enlightenment and Communism.